This is Motormouth, the show where we put Britain's best comedians' motoring knowledge to the test to see who has the biggest Motormouth. Which just about sums it up, really. So the basic premise is akin to the BBC's QI, with a motoring twist and some unique spins. We have a panel show with 4 guest comedians that rotate every week, and one host that takes us through motoring trivia, stories, and history. The only prerequisite for the comedian guests is that they know next to nothing about cars. In similar fashion to QI, the quiz's scoring system and answers will be judged not so much on correctness, but on how funny or witty they are. The quiz part of the show isn't taken so seriously, just used as a vehicle to tell stories, bring funny moments and create chemistry between the guests and the host. The questions and topics in the show aren't there to focus on the technical details or nerdy facts about cars. After all, who's interested in that? When it boils down to it, the point of the show is to take you on a journey through some of the many stories from over a century of motoring history. Whether it's the design and development, the triumph and success in the face of adversity, or more personal anecdotes, behind every car there is a story. A story of not just an object, but a culmination of an era in design, culture, and even politics. A result of hundreds of hours of effort and passion. A story not just of industry and manufacture, but of people. And a story that doesn't end there. Of every single car produced and sold, everyone has its own tale, has witnessed so much. Cars, perhaps more than any other piece of modern technology, are there with us through so many important moments of our lives and of our history. The key to telling these stories would be the host, as it requires someone with extensive motoring knowledge who can participate with the guests and tell them these anecdotes in an engaging way that appeals to a larger audience than just motoring enthusiasts. A show isn't complete, however, without an opening sequence and catchy theme, and licensing permitting, the perfect song to introduce Motormouth would be Driving in My Car by Madness, suitably jaunty and comedic. The show itself would begin with the host introducing the guests, who would each be given their own motoring-related fact. For example, so-and-so was once fined for speeding while wearing a tutu in Chelsea in 1994. After all of the guests have been given their facts, the others have to guess which is true and which are completely made up. Much like the Radio 4 and later TV show Would I Lie to You? After the guests have either succeeded or failed to correctly guess each other's facts, the host would introduce the manufacturer that would be the focus of the episode. Each episode would feature a different make, and each season would be sorted by country of origin. Depending on the amount of history a brand has, multiple marks could be covered in a single episode if there isn't enough to fill the show. The preceding quiz elements of the programme would be divided into rounds for the sake of organisation in the studio, although not presented as such to the audience. The first round consists of a piece-by-piece reveal of a photograph of a car. Inspired by the show Catchphrase, guests would have to guess the model of the car, and the less pieces they need to guess, the more points they get. In the spirit of the show, points would be awarded not just for correct guesses, but for funny, witty and well-timed answers. For example, shouting out, "It's red!" as soon as a red car pops up may well garner points for comedic value, and in that case it's not technically incorrect either. After the vehicle has been revealed, the host goes on to recount a story related to the car, about the design, history, or something that took place with one of the cars involved. This could be anything from the car being used in an infamous crime, shown in pop culture, or driven by someone well known. The second round would bring the show back to a more comedic nature. Shown on screens for the guests would be 8 pictures, 4 cars and 4 very stereotypical looking people, labelled 1 to 4 and A to D. The game would be to match the stereotype to the car, which could lead to some entertaining differences in opinion. This would be open to discussion for the whole panel and intended to be a bit offensive. Phrases like "BMWs don't indicate" and "that's a hairdresser's car" spring to mind. We then cut to a VT to introduce a comedically brief segment entitled Motoring Paint Name of the Week, inspired by Harry Hill's TV burp. The segment would feature one of the many extremely specific proprietary paint names manufacturers use on their cars, and after the VT, the host would very quickly say the name, and then do a closing link for the segment, keeping the section amusingly short. In the third round, the guests would be presented with a picture of a car, and have to guess the decade it's from. More points would be awarded for guessing a date closer to the exact year of manufacture. This could create some disagreements as to what should be considered a classic car. As I found walking around car shows with my dad, half the cars he says can't be classics because he can remember when they were on the roads. The fourth round would be some quick backfire trivia questions. For example, which of these manufacturers has a Formula 1 team? Emphasising the has, present tense, to catch people out. Other questions could be related to common nicknames or reputations, such as what brand is referred to as a Beamer, or what model of Ford was described as a Dagenham dustbin, which allows for an opportunity to explore some of the stories behind the origins of these nicknames and reputations. The next round would involve showing a poster or printed advertisement from the manufacturer of the week's history, with the famous slogan removed from the image. The guests then have to guess what the slogan says based on the remaining information. Again, points could be awarded for comedic answers and not just correct ones. After the answer has been revealed, the host could then go on to talk about the origins of the slogan. A lot of them are very much of their era and wouldn't fly today, but the host could explain the reasoning and story behind it to the guests. Finally, we'd come to the last point scoring round, a race. Set up in the studio in front of the panel, in the shape of the show's M logo, would be a miniature racetrack with 4 radio-controlled cars. The guests would race around the M for 3 laps, contact would be allowed to maximise the chaos, and the host would commentate on the action. Whoever wins would be awarded bonus points to be added to their current total. Once the first guest has crossed the line, the screens fill with checkered flags and the host congratulates them on their additional points. Then the host would announce that it's time to reveal the scores, which would have been calculated by someone on set. For comedic effect, the host would then have someone walk up, hand them a card and whisper in their ear. With a suspenseful pause, they'd then announce the positions of the guests, starting with last place. The runner-up prize for the 3 losing guests would then be revealed, a small and amusingly bizarre piece of a car made by the manufacturer of the episode. This could be anything from a seatbelt buckle to a radio knob or an indicator stalk, mounted on a small wooden base as a trophy. Once the winner has been declared, they would be presented with their prize, a larger, more significant part of the car that the runner-up prizes were taken from, for example a wing mirror, exhaust pipe or headrest, similarly mounted like a trophy. After the prize giving, the show would be brought to a close by the host, cued by a sound effect that would change each week depending on the closing pun. For example, as I appear to have just lost my no claims bonus, we shall have to leave it there for today. Thank you so very much for joining us, and a jolly goodbye to you all. Also, for special occasions, there could be a person or people in the audience who used to work on the production or design of the vehicles, salespeople or owners from the period, with a story to tell relevant to the manufacture of the episode. This would really illustrate the human element to the stories behind these cars. Another special segment could be included for manufacturers which are associated with famous films or television. For example, Aston Martin's intrinsic connection to the James Bond franchise, or the DeLorean's iconic appearance in Back to the Future could be explored, providing there are no copyright issues. An entire special episode could also be done where the guests are all actually motoring journalists or enthusiasts, opposite to the usual premise to put more knowledgeable people to the test. The set would be similar in arrangement to QI's, having a main panel with the host in the centre and the guests either side. The seats would be car seats, with the guests having mounted on the desk in front of them a steering wheel. This wheel would include a horn buzzer, which could be reprogrammed depending on the guest playing an appropriately funny sound. It could also, depending on technical limitations, possibly be set up to control the RC cars for the final round. In front of the panel is the track for this final round. In the shape of the show's M logo, the track actually runs around the edge of the letter, creating a circuit that loops around the outside. Coverage-wise, the guests would be captured by 2 cross-shooting cameras, while a centre camera captures close-ups of the hosts and potentially wide shots of the whole panel. A 4th camera would be mounted on a crane arm to capture high-angle sweeping shots of the set. This could be useful for establishing shots, outro shots, and coverage of the race in the last round. Given the obvious influences of QI, Motormouths, as an intellectual comedy that's focused on giving an audience insight and information, would be similarly well suited to a platform such as BBC Two. Another channel that would be a good fit is Dave. However, it's worth noting that in this day and age, and with the way the future is going, there isn't any show that isn't well suited to online streaming. The likes of iPlayer, Netflix and Amazon Prime are fast becoming the new standard platform in media broadcasting. As a method of future-proofing and ease of accessibility, bearing these platforms in mind is essential. Thank you for listening to my pitch, and goodbye.
how can I blame that? I've been driving in my car. It don't look much, but I've been far. I drive up to Maswell Hill. I've even been to Selseybill. I drove along the A45. I had her up to 58. This copper stopped me the other day. Your mistake, what could I say? The tyres were a little worn. They were okay, I could have sworn. I like driving in my car. I'm satisfied I've got this far. I like driving in my car. It don't look much, but I've been far. I like driving in my car, even with a flat tire. I like driving in my car. It's not quite a Jaguar. I like driving in my car. I'm satisfied I've got this